As we have discussed previously in this class, every extended piece of writing should begin with an introduction. If I am writing a one-sentence email in response to a colleague, of course I can just spit out whatever I have to say and click send. But if I am writing anything that requires more sustained attention, I need to use some kind of strategy to pull in the attention of my reader and focus it on the topic that I want her to be thinking about as she reads my message. Maybe I have a new idea for a project that will be easy to put together and will provide a number of benefits to both of us and to the organization we work for. In my email, I know I'll have to describe the project, explain my plan for implementing it, and enumerate what I think the benefits will be. These talking points will supply content for the body of my email. But before I get to any of that, I need to begin with some global statement that covers the entire extent of what I plan to discuss in the email. And in order to maximize the chances that my colleague will be sympathetic to my proposal, it wouldn't hurt to say something that will foster her interest and express an attitude of mutual goodwill. Dear Sheila, I wanted to contact you about an exciting idea I had about a project that we could work on together. Your experience and expertise would be instrumental to advancing this plan, and I'm eager to get your feedback on my proposal. This paragraph conveys very little information, but it does two important things that any effective introductory paragraph should do. It announces the purpose of the piece of writing, and it employs some kind of strategy for engaging the reader's attention. On an informational level, this short paragraph explains that I want Sheila to consider a particular idea that I have. I'm saving an extended description of my idea for the next paragraph. I don't want the details to get in the way of the main purpose of this introductory paragraph, which is simply to get Sheila's attention. On an emotional level, however, I am using a number of strategies for buttering up Sheila, for example, by flattering her experience and expertise, and for stimulating her curiosity and receptivity, for example, by calling the project exciting and soliciting her input. The introduction, that is, describes what I plan to talk about, but it also says something about why, as in why I think this topic is important to talk about and why I think that my reader should care. These days, no one suffers from lack of reading material. An email user's inbox, like the internet and the world itself, is jam-packed with things to read. In order for me to pay attention to any particular message, it has to reel me in right away, not only by promising to give me interesting information, but also by giving me some reason to care about it. For an email writer, taking a few extra seconds to compose this kind of introductory paragraph can make the difference between a successful pitch of your idea on one hand and the prospect of having your email going completely unread on the other. Although there are important differences between writing an email and writing an academic research paper, the value of an effective introduction is identical in both situations. Of course, one of the biggest differences between an email and an academic paper is that the email is written to a particular person, which makes it easier for me to make a personal connection with my reader. I know that Sheila will respond well to a certain kind of flattery, and I can pitch my proposal as something that could potentially help Sheila herself in a direct way by opening up a particular professional opportunity. For the writer of an academic essay, the audience is not a specific person, but a generalized audience of anyone who might be willing to pay attention to some particular academic discussion. It may help to imagine your ideal reader, a person who is curious about the world and who is generally well informed, but who may not know very much about the particular topic that you are writing about. The purpose of your introduction is to attempt to make a connection with this anonymous reader and to impress them with the significance of what you have to say. Although you have no idea who your readers will be, it is possible that many of your readers have not even been born yet, there are certain universal values that all people have in common and which influence the way they pay attention to the world. In particular, there are 5 common strategies for beginning the introductory paragraph of a research paper, each one directed toward stimulating an emotional response in a reader. 1. Surprise me with an alarming or unusual fact. People usually respond viscerally to anything that disrupts their expectations. For this reason, unusual facts, quirky or peculiar details about a particular topic, are particularly effective at cutting through people's ordinary mindset and arousing their curiosity. Pluto has a smaller surface area than Russia. In the same way that everyone has unique fingerprints, we all have different tongue prints as well. The Sardinian cheese Casu Marzu contains live maggots. Each of these opening sentences for essays about Pluto, tongues, and cheese identify odd pieces of information and use them to convey the impression that the essay to follow will not only teach me things I didn't know before, but that there are fun, weird, and uncanny aspects to what might have seemed to be mundane topics. If I am writing an essay with a more argumentative agenda, I might build up on this technique by presenting information that is not only surprising, but also scary. Traffic jams on American roads cost Americans more than $100 billion in lost revenue. There is more carbon dioxide in the air today than there has been in the last 800,000 years of Earth's history. More than 50 Americans die every hour from smoking cigarettes. Leading with these kinds of facts, foregrounding them in the first paragraph of my essay, is a powerful rhetorical tool for communicating to a reader that you have something important to discuss. 2. Excite my sympathy with a story. People respond powerfully to narrative structures. When you tell a story, you evoke a raft of personal responses in your reader. Even a brief anecdote can elicit sympathy for and identification with a character in the story. It arouses suspense and curiosity about the outcome of the story, and it raises questions about the social context and larger meaning of the themes and forces at play in the narrative. Although the main goal of a research paper is to convey information rather than to tell a story, the techniques of storytelling can play an important role in a research paper, especially in the introduction. As you reflect on your research, keep an eye out for stories about people whose experiences provide a compelling perspective on your topic. In a few quick sentences, I could sketch out the story of the first time Pluto was discovered, a legal case that hung on evidence provided by tongue prints, or summarize my own experience being served casu marzu, the maggot cheese. Similarly, controversial topics can also be introduced in a way that foregrounds the human scale of the issue. My paper about America's congested roadways might begin by recounting the personal experience of a motorist who lost a job because she was stuck in a traffic jam. My paper about greenhouse gases might begin by telling the story of a climate refugee who had to be evacuated from her coastal community because of rising sea levels. My essay about the dangers of smoking could begin with a case study of a person who is suffering from lung cancer as a result of smoking. In each case, I will have to tell the story in just a few sentences, but this brief piece of narrative can provide a powerful point of entry into the conversation I want to have about my thesis. 3. Arouse my curiosity with a thought-provoking question. When you come across a question, any question, there is an innate response programmed into the human brain to consider a possible answer, even if only at a subconscious level. At the same time, a question is a very intimate form of address that invites a listener or reader's participation. A question speaks to me as an individual, even if it was posed by someone who's never met me and never will. I can't help feeling personally touched by a question, and even if the rest of the essay takes the form of a lecture from the writer to the reader, that opening question grounds everything that follows in the sense of dialogue and mutuality that the opening question fosters. Of course, such questions are most effective when they are open-ended and at least partially unanswerable. What year was Pluto discovered is not particularly effective. Once I provide an answer, 1930, the conversation is over. A more effective opening question would be something like, what is it about the dwarf planet Pluto that captivates the imagination of so many people? In the same vein, we rely on our tongues to perform a variety of daily functions, but how much do we really know about the fleshy, muscular organ that sits inside our mouths? Who would want to eat a food that is swarming with live maggots? What will it take for America to address the crisis of its crumbling infrastructure? Do you know the size of your carbon footprint? Given what we know about the devastating health effects of smoking, why are there more than 1 billion smokers in the world today? Once you have asked such a question, you can move forward by addressing the significance of the question and move towards supplying your own answers. You may specify a particular answer to your opening question in your thesis statement, but doing so is not strictly necessary. Questions like these act as conversation starters, rather than as the kinds of questions that anyone would expect a direct answer to. 4. Invoke philosophical principles with a memorable quotation, or coin your own memorable quotation. Another popular technique for beginning an introduction is to present a quotation, whether it's a quote from someone who is an authority in the area you're writing about, or simply a memorable turn of phrase that has some relationship to a prominent theme in your paper. For example, if I'm writing a paper about Pluto, I can quote from prominent astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, "All Plutophiles are based in America. If you go to other countries, they have much less of an attachment to either the existence or preservation of Pluto as a planet." But if my paper is going to suggest that Pluto fascinates us because of its mystery and distance, I might opt for a quotation that addresses this sensibility. For example, Cam Gigande's quotation as follows, Anything, a destination, a person, that has some mystery around it becomes exciting and attractive. In either case, the quotation gives me a striking statement with which to open my essay, and then the next few sentences of my introductory paragraph will be devoted to building a bridge between the quotation and the main point of my essay. Sometimes writers will include quotations as epigraphs, disconnected blurbs that hover above the first sentence of the essay. But a more useful strategy is to write the quotation directly into the first sentence of your essay like this. Here's a sample introduction to an essay about Pluto. The actor Cam Gigande has said that anything, a destination, a person, that has some mystery around it becomes exciting and attractive. Gigande was talking about vampires when he made this observation, but the power of mystery over our ideas and feelings also informs our relationship to many other things, even distant planetary bodies. The enduring appeal of the ex-planet Pluto provides a case in point. Of course, the internet makes it possible to find quotations about any topic at the click of a mouse. That's how I found these quotations from Neil deGrasse Tyson and Cam Gigande. But another possibility is to try to articulate your own impressive-sounding statement to use as the opening sentence of your essay. Try to imagine the ideal sentence to introduce your essay, and then try to write it. Of course, you don't need quotation marks when you quote yourself. You can just go ahead and say it. Here's my example. Pluto calls to our fantasies and evokes our wildest dreams. In reality, it is just an ordinary space rock, one of millions of similar objects that populate the outer solar system. But in our imagination, it exerts an unparalleled magnetism and intrigue. This language is a little more elevated than the language I would normally use for a research paper, but it serves the purpose of weaving a kind of spell over my readers that will hopefully encourage them to keep reading. You might not be as culturally prominent as Neil deGrasse Tyson or Cam Gigande, but you have the same words available to use that they have, and you know your subject very well, so there's no reason you can't craft an opening statement for your paper that sounds just as good as anything they have to say. 5. Engage the senses by describing a specific image. In the first week of this class, you identified some specific artifact, a picture or an object, that bears some significant relationship to your topic. When faced with a complex topic of inquiry, a helpful exercise is to start with something tangible, visible, and concrete, something that is comprehensible, a word which originally means able to be held in the hand. Describing such an object in the opening sentences of an essay has the effect of captivating the reader's imagination by appealing to a visual, sensory experience, but it also opens up an interesting perspective on your research topic. A research paper about Pluto might begin with a detailed description of an artist's rendition of Pluto's surface. A paper about the tongue might begin with a thick description of what the surface of the tongue looks like under a microscope. A paper about casu marzu might begin by detailing the appearance, odor, and flavor of this unique cheese. More argumentative papers can also make effective use of the same strategy. A paper on roadway congestion could begin by describing the faces of motorists stranded in a traffic jam. An essay on carbon emissions could begin with a description of a polar bear stranded on an ice floe. And an essay on the dangers of smoking might begin with a vivid description of the appearance of a cigarette itself, such a fragrant and innocent-looking white tube. These image-based descriptions at the beginning of an essay do not have to continue for more than a few sentences to establish an effect that can provide a powerful starting point for your essay. It may take some experimentation in order for you to determine which of these 5 strategies is the best fit for you and your topic. You might consider sketching out opening lines for an introductory paragraph using a few different styles. It is likely that some styles will click with your essay readily, while some will put up more resistance. The best idea for a writer is always to go with the solution that makes the most sense to you on a gut level. But you may not know what's right for you before you step out of your comfort zone and play around with some of these rhetorical techniques. Once you know what opening strategy you want to use, you can think of your introductory paragraph as a structure with 3 parts. The first part is the opening strategy, which should occupy the first few sentences. The last sentence of your introductory paragraph, following standard conventions of academic writing, should be your thesis statement, articulated as clearly and conspicuously as you can make it. The middle part, the part between the opening strategy and the thesis statement, consists of anything that you have to say to get the reader from point A to point B. This connective tissue is very important, since a good opening strategy is only effective if, in addition to getting my attention, it leads logically into the main point of my essay. It is a fragrant and innocent-looking white tube, tipped with an inch of tan paper swaddling a puffy nub of cotton. In its machine-wrapped symmetry, it could be a sacred object from a vanished culture. It emits a rich vegetative odor that excites the senses. It is difficult to imagine that such a delicate-looking origami cylinder can produce such suffering and carnage, but this cigarette and others like it are responsible for the deaths of 50 Americans every hour. They contain a toxic broth of natural and artificial chemicals that are poisonous to every system in the human body, and yet the sale of these deadly objects constitutes a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Although smoking has become less popular in the United States and Europe, rates of smoking are on the rise in many other countries, posing a major public health risk to some of the world's most vulnerable populations. A global response is necessary to combat this global problem, and the World Health Organization is the most prominent global organization devoted to addressing public health issues of this scale and complexity. The World Health Organization must undertake a combination of legal, educational, and economic initiatives to protect people in the developing world from the predatory behavior of large tobacco companies. The text in blue is my opening strategy, the text in green is my thesis statement, and the text in between is a bridge from one to the other. How exactly you craft this bridge will depend on the specific dynamics of your own writing project, but if you have an opening strategy that excites you and a thesis that you believe in, it should be relatively easy for you to find a way of leading the way from one to the other. A well-written introduction generates a sense of momentum that can help motivate you as you go about composing the rest of your essay. It lays out the scope and purpose of the essay to come, and it points the way forward for both you as a writer and for your reader.